Good afternoon. Welcome to this session of the Indo-American Art Council's 2024 Literary Festival, where literature, culture, and intellectual discourse converge. IAAC, as you all may know, has been providing a platform for literature and the arts in New York for several years now. For this year's Literary Festival, IAAC has brought together writers and poets from around the world. This session has been organized in collaboration with the Prabha Khaitan Foundation as part of their Right Circle series. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation, PKF, is a non-profit trust founded by the late Dr. Prabha Khaitan in the early 1980s and is dedicated to socio-cultural welfare and humanitarian causes. Based in Kolkata, the foundation is dedicated to promoting performing arts, culture, education, literature, gender equality, women's empowerment, and social welfare projects in India. One of the noteworthy aspects of the festival is that all sessions are free to the public, allowing literature enthusiasts from all walks of life to come together and immerse themselves in the beauty and power of the written word. This afternoon's session features two remarkable individuals in conversation about one of the most transformational personas to emerge on the world stage from India in the past century and a half, Swami Vivekananda. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce the very accomplished author and journalist, Anshul Chaturvedi, senior editor at the Times of India. Anshul began his journalism career in 1996 as a hard news journalist and has spent his career observing and covering everything from politics to cinema. He came across the works of Swami Vivekananda at age 16 and has since written about his teachings for various platforms, including The Speaking Tree, for over 15 years. He has so far authored 4 books: Uncut, which is a collection of his interviews with the 3 Khans of Hindi cinema. The second moved away from his journalistic work and came from years of observing why stress trips young professionals with increasing frequency, and it's titled Work Sucks, or Do You? His next 2 books are an extension of his lifelong interest in the personalities of Swami Vivekananda and Subhash Bose, respectively, namely the Vivekananda Handbook for Everyday Living and A Bird from Afar. The Vivekananda Handbook for Everyday Living, which is the subject of the discussion today, deals with some of the questions that many of us have been pondering over and struggling with. Anecdotal and thought-provoking, it unravels the wisdom of Swami Vivekananda's teachings to guide one through life in personal, professional, and societal spheres. In conversation with Anshul this afternoon is Swami Sarvapriyananda ji of the Ramakrishna Order. He is the current resident Swami and head of the Vedanta Society of New York, a position he has been serving in since January 2017. Swamiji was inclined towards spirituality from his childhood and was inspired by the lives of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. After completing his business management degree at age 23, Swami Sarvapriyananda joined the Ramakrishna Order and took his monastic vows. Swamiji frequently speaks at symposia and events focused on Advaita Vedanta teachings. He has been recognized as one of the best known lecturers on Vedanta in the world today. His talks are popular with the internet audience, and he has been a speaker on various prestigious forums such as TEDx and SAC. He has also been invited to speak at several universities across the world, including Harvard University. His popular talks have been compiled into a collection of e-books. Who Am I? What is Vedanta? And Dissolved into Infinity are some of the titles. I don't want to take any more time away from what promises to be a very interesting and illuminating afternoon. So over to you, Anshul and Swamiji.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for having us on this beautiful platform. Swami Vivekananda, I'm sure most of us know something about Swami Vivekananda. especially for those few who may not have heard much about Swami Vivekananda, is one of the most remarkable characters in recent history. Just imagine what he accomplished. As a young monk from India, he came to the West in 1893, representing Hinduism in the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. It's a story that I think just about every Indian knows. But what many of us do not know is afterwards he came to New York and he started the Vedanta Society of New York, which is the first Indian ashram in the West. What he did was, on one hand, he built a bridge between the East and the West. A bridge which exists till today, across which so many other Swamis and Gurus and Lamas and Yogis and philosophers. I mean, it's basically the transmission of Eastern spiritual heritage to the West. It's a major movement now, well established in America and across different Western countries. In 2013, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, "The Man Who Brought Yoga to the West." So that was one part of his work, building this bridge, and because of which today we have words like yoga and karma and meditation, and all of these are part of the popular culture in America and the West. That's one side of it. And he was a pioneer here. There's no doubt about this. There's a very beautiful book, American Veda, written by Phil Goldberg, where he traces how Hinduism came to the West. And he starts the story with Vivekananda as the pioneer. And then he went back to India, the other part of what he accomplished, which we Indians in India we know. He went back to India and roused his countrymen, us Indians, to a sense of our heritage, of our greatness and our potential and our future. A historian called him the unconscious father of Indian nationalism. A historian pointed out that before Vivekananda, till Vivekananda's time, prominent national leaders, both political and social reformers, used to talk about themselves as Bengali or Madrasi or Marathi or Punjabi. From Vivekananda afterwards, almost entirely all national leaders in India, political and social, referred to themselves as Indians. So he accomplished this and aroused his countrymen and sort of kick-started the Indian movement for social reform on one hand and political freedom on the other. Jawaharlal Nehru, speaking at the Ramakrishna Mission in New Delhi after independence, says, "In my generation, we all read Vivekananda. All political leaders, freedom fighters, all of them." So, all of this, building the bridge between the East and the West, and coming back and rousing his own countrymen, awakening the country as it were, all of this he accomplished in 10 years. In 10 years. In the United States he came in 1893, and 1902 he said, "I'm ready to depart." He said, "I will not live to see 40. 39 years of age, 1902, 4th of July, very carefully picked, an Independence Day. And he left his body on the 4th of July. So it is 10 years. And the government of India has declared National Youth Day in India. It's celebrated 12th January. Swami Vivekananda's birthday is celebrated as National Youth Day because, we will always remember Vivekananda. There's no old Vivekananda. There's no grandfatherly Vivekananda. There's always that cyclonic monk from India, that young person, vibrant. There have been a lot written on Vivekananda, and there continues to be. See, he's a living phenomenon. We're not discussing history here. Sister Nivedita wrote that when Vivekananda stood up to speak in the World Parliament of Religions at Chicago, behind him was 5,000 years of patient civilizational development in India. And in front of him was the New West. It was the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, with all its dynamism, power, and ambition and restlessness. And when he stood up to speak, it is not only the East and West which met, but also the past and the future. So Vivekananda looks to the future, looks to us and beyond us for centuries. I was talking to Anshul this morning and saying that I had this sense that Vivekananda, as the centuries pass, Vivekananda will only stand taller and taller. A lot of books have been written, and continues to be written. to give you a sense of how alive Vivekananda is, just this week, a couple of days back, I was at the United Nations in a headquarters building here in Manhattan. An exhibition on Swami Vivekananda was inaugurated by the staff members. We didn't have anything to do with it. The staff members themselves just put up an exhibition about Vivekananda. A few months before that, a documentary, America's First Guru, by Raja Chaudhary, was released on PBS. And next week, I'm going to talk about Vivekananda, teachings about work and spirituality, to the managers of Wells Fargo. So, all of this, it shows how live Vivekananda is. Now, the book we're going to talk about is a book with a difference. The organizers forwarded an e-copy, a PDF to me. I was going through it with increasing delight when I was reading that book. And I ordered it. Today, Amazon informed me that your copy has shipped, the Vivekananda handbook. So I order it for yourself. I'll tell you why. Mainly because I've seen a lot of parents in the Vedanta Society talk about Upanishads, Gita, enthusiasts about spirituality. And when parents become enthusiasts of spirituality, the first thing they want to do is impose it on the children. Swami, how can I make my son or daughter more spiritual? We'll talk about it more today in the conversation, but I can give you the answer. Give them this book. Even better, don't give them this book. Read the book yourself, and then you'll know what to say to the children. With that, let me go over to Anshul, the writer of this book. Anshul, my question to kick off things is, how did Vivekananda come into your life? See, Vivekananda came into my life because for whatever reason, from childhood, I was a kind of a spiritual seeker. I was interested in God and God realization, and Vivekananda was available at home as a book. But Anshul came to it in a different way. How did Vivekananda come into your life, and how did this book come about?
When you were giving an introduction, I had a sense of something I wanted to say. That typically, when an author comes to talk about something, he's supposed to be domain expert on the topic. That is clearly not my space. But also given the person, that this is a person whose linguistic ability and sharpness of thought is so high that you are scared of writing about him in English because he wrote in English way better than I can write about him. So where I am placed right now is like you're introducing a new cricketer who will talk about Bradman, and Tendulkar will ask him how you did that. So it's a bit of a corner to come from. Whatever I do, they know better. But inherently, on a more serious note, I think the reason why he referred to children and people and parenting and all of that is because this came to me not as an intellectual exercise. It did not come to me from religion. I want to be very clear on that, because when you sell religion to a teenager or a child, it is you are almost guaranteeing a blowback. There is no way to force down a superior thought onto a child in terms of religion, at least. The child's needs are inherently psychological, emotional. Teenagers' turmoil is about understanding some degree of things which you don't know till that time. What's life, what is death, what is time, stuff like that. And I was somebody who was inherently, I wouldn't say I was a very confident youngster, at least till I was 15 or so. And all the issues which I would have in terms of trying to grapple my mind around or understand things, when I happened to completely by chance have a copy of the original teachings of Swami Vivekananda at my home, and that was an old book. I think it was my Tauji's book, and he had passed away. My father had brought some of his belongings to his house. It was in the library. It was completely by chance. And as I was mentioning earlier in the day, that fortunately at that point there was no Instagram. So when you had a book, you read the book. And when you read the book, you began to understand that this person is answering things which I didn't even know I had questions for. So you look at it as an antidepressant, as your own requirement. And once you began to take it as something which you need in the short term, I think I took it very intensely. And I do recall till today my parents being quite alarmed that will I go Swamiji's way. And They called somebody, they got an astrologer saying कि क्या ये सनातनी की तरफ जा रहा है, बहुत दिनों से मतलब ये हरकतें हो रही हैं. So the people thought that legitimately this is a fad. And sometimes I don't disagree with that, because like in Delhi where I am, everybody from 18 to 23 is a leftist. Then once they get into civil services, they are no longer. So there are fads of teenage which come and go, like people come and go in teenage. But this inherently I thought was a counter rebellion. And what I mean by that is that there is the default rebellion of teenage and of youth. And that default rebellion is about doing exactly what everybody else is doing in rebellion. So everybody wants to have a different hairstyle. So if you don't have a different hairstyle, you stand out. So the rebellion becomes templated, that I will do this, I will stay out, whatever I will be. Now he brings a rebellion which does not fade with age. It stays with you. And every single point it sustains you into being somebody defined and who's not willing to go with the flow. So I like, it's been what now, I'm 51, so 16, 51, some distance to stay with the thought process, which is not mandate for me. It's not that my appraisals come through what I write about him. So the book has never left me in that sense. And then I was showing Swami some of the books I still have them here, that I have kept those books from the time I was in college. And they're, quite torn apart and all of that right now. But he answered everything, and he first taught me how to handle my own insecurities, and then he taught me how to handle other people. So when I entered the workplace, and then people say, look, this is otherworldly. Spirituality is otherworldly. So like specifically in India, काम धंधे की बात करो ना, like this is day to day, this is bread and butter, that. All this philosophy, ड्राइवर की बात कर लेना, उससे बात करनी थोड़ी करना. So in that universe, you realize that he was answering questions there as well. And that's when I began to first use the phrase that he was my Dale Carney in teenage, and I was my Stephen Covey at work. I have been sort of not needing to read beyond that space. And things went from there to there. You know the rest of it, so I'll take it back.
What you said about at 18 in Delhi everybody is an activist, and then you get into civil service and then you're not. And there is a saying in Bengal that every Bengali when is it in 20 is a Marxist, used to get one time. After Didi, no. At 20, every Bengali was a Marxist, and at 40, every Bengali was a devotee of Sarvapriyananda and Ma Sharda and Swami Vivekananda, which is very true. I started off as a spiritual seeker for whatever reason. The books were there at home, just like what Anshul said. Books were there because my parents were devoted, and it just strikes me. Pascal, he writes in one place that leave good books lying around the house and teach the child to read. The child will take care of its own education. And that's what happened, I think, to both of us. But we come from different angles to this. I came at it because when I read Vivekananda said, God is real, God can be realized, God can be experienced, and this is the goal and purpose of life, and that resonated with me and has ever since. But he came at it from quite a different angle, and that's what makes this book interesting. If you're a spiritual seeker, a yogi, there is a huge amount of literature for you. But Vivekananda is incredible that way. If you're a spiritual seeker, yes. But if you are a corporate executive, if you are a struggling teenager, if you are a housewife, if you are a politician, if you are running an NGO, what's called a non-profit here, all of that, Vivekananda has something to say to you. But how did this particular book come about? I know you were writing in the speaking tree about Vivekananda. Then what happened?
So inherently, because I didn't have a reference point who translated Vivekananda for me. So my Vivekananda is, it's like pretty much this is how it is. It's from the college days, so not much left of it. But this is the original letter. So I have 3 other verses, but I stick to the original because it has my markings of what has stayed in my mind. And when I would cite Vivekananda for any subject to somebody, saying, maybe this, maybe that, or I would go to the speaking tree editor and say, I want to write on this, and she would give me this expression. So the first time I wrote a piece and got published was The Manager Monk. So the first point is manage, because you want to see you to write. You talk about somebody in management, you want a person who's made billions. What has Vivekananda made financially for him to be a managerial advice? But why was my work Guru Vivekananda that people could make head or tail of? That you should be something else, you should be reading this, etc. etc. So it was a fragment of thoughts which were only in my head. And over time, I began to write a little more smaller pieces. Then on his 150th birth anniversary which you're talking about, is when I had written a slightly longer article. I've read that out in some parts too. I don't know if it makes sense to read it in, I don't know what the timelines are. But it's a longish piece I wrote, and when that piece got published, some people came to me and said, this could be a book. At which point I didn't think that, because again, writing a book on Vivekananda, it's like, I don't know, just trying to clear the boundary at Australian ground. It's not a topic to take lightly. You write on cinema, you write on Amitabh Bachchan, it's fine, like how long can you go? It's fine. But here, the space, and also, like we discussed earlier, there are a lot of people expect Vivekananda to be full of gravitas. It is elevated to such a stature that it has to be very, very heavy. And I'm not into that space. Like 2 days back, I was seeing Swamiji's video on YouTube about Vivekananda Palmoda. And you talk about he saw the world in an atom. No, that is not my space. My space is, how do I handle the boss today? I don't want answers right now. The cosmos can wait. How do I handle my children today? So I don't want to split my space, and I'm still seeking him as a solution. So people will be a little confused that what does this mean? I said maybe I'll try to explain to you what it means, what I have lived. That's about it. It is not meant to be, let me tell you how to live your life. I mean, you can have a not happy life, what is it to me? I want my life to be happy, I'll tell you how I handled it. It's not meant to be a guru's space.
That's actually that's one thing that struck me when I was browsing the book is on one hand how intensely personal it is. It's very personal to him, and that's why it's coming from the heart, from his lived experience. It's so interesting that way, and yet how applicable it is to everybody. I don't know, is it because it's Vivekananda and therefore it's applicable to everybody, but also the subtle way he has presented his life story and yet somehow kept himself in the background and let Vivekananda take the foreground. So that's why it's a very well balanced book, I would say. Let's go into the work aspect of it. In this book, and also an entirely independent book which you have written about work. So what does Vivekananda tell you and us about the workplace? I mean, spirituality or having fun. Most grown-up people, adults, you don't spend too much of your time unless you are a teenager or a Columbia grad. Even Columbia grad students work a lot. So most of your time is spent in work. So work is extremely important to us. What does Vivekananda tell us about work, and how did it apply to you personally also?
So Vivekananda hasn't written extensively on work. It's not that he has pages and pages of how to handle your career. But what he has written is like in a, like we discussed in physics, I guess, some atoms are heavier than others, some lines are heavier than others, and they have enough meat to, take you through something which something lighter might not work. I could read 100 pages for somebody else on managing the workplace, managing the stakeholder, managing the customer. I don't want to. I have a basic sort. No, so I'll tell you what the basics are. And some of them are counterintuitive. So the very first thing, so I just read out lines which he had said because there aren't that many. Even the greatest fool can accomplish a task it be after his heart. But the intelligent man is he who can convert every work into one that suits his taste. No work is petty. He indeed is intelligent who notices this and succeeds in making all work truly great. This wipes out the entire grumble generation.
Grumble generation.
Because you have thousands of people coming to work saying, I was not meant for this. I want to start with the actual New York Times. And that's not how careers go. No work is petty. And when you do petty work pettily, The boss doesn't reward you saying, hey, you seem to be sucking at the small work, let me make you the manager. So that's a lesson which I think thousands of people need to understand, that when you treat work, it is you who are being petty. And that stops you, because then you're into a cycle of being infuriated because nobody is getting what I am good at. So it's a bit like stock cricket, like if you ask me to be a bowler in the nets, I can't say I'll only bowl well when I'm bowling to Bradman. You have to bowl in the nets first. Then you will pick for playing for Ranji. Then you might go somewhere. You can't say no, I deliver this. I meant for greater things. I'll play the World Cup final. So that is where I think a lot of young people, they are really short of patience, and they come into the workspaces saying, this is what I want to be. And I tell them, don't read Paulo. The universe doesn't conspire to give you what you want to go and work. So it's primarily that. That's the very first thing. That I had to, as a worker, I had to escape being the grumbler. As a manager, I have a healthy contempt for people who say, I'm meant for greater things. I say, why can't I see it? You get there by it's the very first thing. And this happened in a very practical sense. So this is at a time when I am working in Jammu, in a newspaper, and I am working because of, again, Vivekananda made me work. I tell you why. Because had I stayed on good terms with my parents, I would have been at Rao Study Circle for 4 years studying with IAAC. Because I was completely on a different tangent. I had a pretty much a situation where I walked out of my home. I took a different place. I said, I don't want to be not listening to you but taking your money all the time. So I'll handle it myself. So I had to look for a job. I found this job in a very small newspaper in a byline in Jammu. And I'm given the, whatever survey or something, come and start working there, fine, I'm thodi bahut aati hai. But I'm not a very docile employee, so the editor doesn't like my attitude too much. I said, this headline doesn't work. He says, listen, piche hata, give him page 10, let him handle page 10, stay out of my sight. Now, page 10 is the most irrelevant part of that paper. But if I have a story there, I want to invest 1 hour to make the story look good. I want to do a layout. I want to write a headline 4 times. So I remember the guy who was making the front of the paper said to me, he was looking at me how I was struggling with that page. He said, Beta, aise kaam karoge, ek din tum front page banao and work. It's a very small thing, but actually it's what Vivekananda is saying. No work is petty. Page 10 of a local paper is not petty. I was not born into Times India system. I was born into nothing in journalism. I don't have mass comm degree, by the way. So, what he was saying was working for me practically. That is my take. It's not that it was very esoteric and it might not work or whatever. I used to have on my desktop. By doing well the duty which is nearest to us, the duty which is in our hands now, we make ourselves stronger. We find ourselves in a position for which we are fit. And if one has some capacity above another, the world will find it out too. Then he says, he who grumbles at the little thing that has fallen to his lot to do, will grumble at everything. Always grumbling, he will lead a miserable life. But that man who does his duty as he goes, putting his shoulder to the wheel, higher and higher duties will fall to his share. So between this and Radhakrishnan saying to me in his commentary on the Gita, that Indian thought is essentially that how you work is much more important than what you do. So you could be a janitor, but if you do that work thoroughly, it's better than being a army chief or leading the Italian army into World War II and having background in the first fortnight. So you could be efficient as a Havaldar and be inefficient as a field marshal. What you do is not necessarily important. How you do defines you. And that fine line, I think I was not clued into that, because when you are young, what you want to do is to quickly crack something very exclusive and earn a good salary. You don't know how to handle the struggles. We know in our country it's almost cultural, right? So many boys from interior Hindi, West India, out of every 20 boys, one gets to the services. The other 19 keep saying, my life is a failure, I couldn't crack the IAS. We have brought that model that what you do defines you. How you do is not really important. Like you could execution is not something respected in our system. We don't like to work with our hands, for example. So those things he took away from my how do I say, like the unlearning was more important than the learning. First you unlearn, then you start learning afresh.
Great. Apart from work, one other area which people struggle with is people, other people. difficult people, boss, in family, criticism, slander, aggression, hostility. So I know you say a lot about that and what light Vivekananda throws on that. How did you deal with it in your life and how did Vivekananda help you there?
Hostility, that's a long story. So, there are two parts. One is that very early, when he wrote such radical things like, I wish I was born an orphan. I wish I had nobody to care for. Because he used a phrase which I understood a little later in life. He talked about the hell of emotionalism.
The hell of
emotionalism. I interpreted it to understand the omnipresence of emotional blackmail in Asian societies. Because everybody is trying to tell you, you should have done this. If you didn't do it, you're not a great person. I mean, the Indian cinema is built on these stories, right? Beta meri marne ki pehle tum shaadi kar lo. How is your story linked to my death? What a good relation. But we have institutionalized that model of, how do I put it? That instead of emotional strength, you have emotional weakness in situations. You are pulled down. I can't do this. X will be upset. I can't do that. Y will be upset. So you live subpar. And then you live frictionally. You live not fully satisfied. And that makes you irritable. So you also give it back. And you have irritation coming from everybody distant to everybody else. So I learned very early from him to, one sentence, right? Very simply. I do not care a fig for human approbation or criticism. I began the book with 5 words of phrase. I do not care for human help. So once you enter that space, you find your answers. Not so collaborative. And this is a specific point he's making. I think I'll come with that. Especially hostility, right? I talked about that. So this is either it's office or it is personal life, but the names of those who will wish to injure us will be legion. But is that not the surest sign of our having the truth? The more I have been opposed, the more my energy is always on expression. When he says that, then you don't worry about being opposed. You assume that what worked for you might work for you as well. And the other thing, and I'll go to emotionalism later, but I think one of the most interesting takeaways I got was the point I discussed in the morning. That he wrote this piece about a gentleman called Mr. Hudson, who wrote a note to an American paper when he was here saying that the Swami is, XYZ, whatever. And it was a sharp note, and then people from India wrote back to the Swami saying, please write back to the media in America about what Mr. Hudson has written and issue a rebuttal. So there's a line from the lecture of Swami Vivekananda, it's a small para. I have no need to reply to what Mr. Hudson has spoken against me. In the first place, it is unnecessary. And secondly, I should be bringing myself down to the level of people of Mr. Hudson's type. Are you mad? Shall I fight from here with one Mr. Hudson? Through the Lord's grace, people who are far above Mr. Hudson in rank listen to me with veneration. It's a one-line answer. But it makes me, it draws the line from the next 20-25 years. And why is it? I break it into 2 parts. I have no need to reply to what Mr. Hudson has spoken against me. Mostly there is no need. I don't know how many of you have seen Delhi traffic. But in Delhi's traffic, especially, I don't know if Mumbai is more civilized. I don't know, Kolkata has no traffic, doesn't move, it just stands there. But in Delhi's traffic, when a vehicle touches your vehicle, you are duty bound to step out and dance and stop the traffic and say, how dare you touch my car? All that jingoism doesn't solve anything. Maybe the scratch is worth 200 rupees. But the need to react is inherent into every driver. That his honor is hurt if he doesn't go and abuse the other driver. A lot of our reactions are from the space of my honor has been hurt. You don't need to reply. The problem is that it's very easy to psych up, especially my gender, that not responding means what? तुम्हें हिम्मत नहीं जवाब देने का तो जवाब तो देना है जवाब देने गाली देना है उसकी वापस गाली देनी है अब सड़क पे आधा घंटा ट्रैफिक बनती है, कर लेते रहो. But the need is not really there. It's not a legal document. It's not a notice in the court. You don't need to reply to it. Instagram, somebody abuses, you don't have to answer. Celebrities are replying to every abuser on Instagram. Why are you coming down to their levels? So that needs to reply. To validate your honor, I think is something which is something you need to outgrow. Your honor is not in the hands of every Tom, Dick and Harry. And my own takeaway from Vivekananda is in terms of even the word fame, and that's my own personal takeaway. That when you say the loss of fame, loss of honor, don't bother about these things. What is fame except the opinion of others? They could change their mind tomorrow. I mean, governments come, governments go. But the voter changes his mind every 4 years. Why do you bother what people think? It's not constant. So that is the larger universe. And the second part, he talked about this, that people who are far above Mr. Hudson listen to with veneration. So in that universe, I learned to draw the line. If somebody is critical of me, are there others above that person who listen to me with veneration? So the point is not veneration. The point is that somebody on the road outside might look at this book and say, look at me and say, the dumbest author I ever met. I'll say, thank you, Mr. Hudson, but Swami thinks the book is good. I'll stay with that. So you draw a filter of your feedback, not listen to everybody.
There's actually a lot in that book. For example, the chapter on spirituality. I know he says that he did not come into Vivekananda from a conventional spiritual seeker. He did not. And yet, what he takes away about spirituality from Vivekananda, the 4 essential points. Will you quickly tell us the 4 essential points in the chapter on spirituality? What is essential to spirituality and what consists of that space. Just as an example of how new and fresh his vision is. Both Vivekananda and what Anshul takes away from Vivekananda. This is Bollywood going on.
So one thing here, and I don't know whether this is the point which somebody is making when he talks about children and all of that, whether it appeals to an easier audience or whatever. I also want to explain that Vivekananda came to me as a function of religion / spirituality, because these are not necessarily the same things in our universe. As a cynical teenager, as somebody who questions a lot, growing up in a relatively orthodox North Indian family, I could not make sense of the protocol of day-to-day religion. Like, for example, if I am told that on Tuesday we will not do this or do this. So I say, but what is exactly about Tuesday? No, this is very ancient and it is there. I said, but Tuesday as the 7-day Christian calendar is only 1,000 years back. So how could it be aligned to this calendar schedule as to what it works? And secondly, why would God have the time to understand what day of the week it is? So people say, ये करना है तो क्यों करना है? So when you're taught religion that way, you step back if you are a questioning person. Then you say, no, I'm not religious. Then the answer is, I'm an atheist. But if you say I'm an atheist, it makes no sense because I'm scared of death. So what happens once I die? When I listen to science and I'm told there's, that star takes 100 light years to be visible to the earth. So my mind at night is saying, so notionally speaking, a star could be created somewhere. Its light will reach it after I'm dead. You're extremely minuscule. Then there were more complex things like, reading about this line by Samuel Jackson that friendship between mortals can be entered on no terms other than one must at some point mourn for the other. So to understand that then if people care about each other, then the longer they care, the worse is the handling of the loss when it happens. Then you shouldn't care about anybody. That's very odd way to live. So conventional religion is not asking anything from me. It is saying कि तुम मंगलवार को ये नहीं खाओगे, उससे मेरा कोई मुद्दा solve नहीं होगा. And then what religion becomes is the daily aarti. Now without being rude to the pujari on a given day, I wanted to ask him कि सुख संपत्ति घरावे कष्ट मिटे तन का. तो सुख संपत्ति अमेरिका में ज्यादा वाले आरती नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो हमारे कम क्यों इंडिया में? और कष्ट तन का जो मिटता है उसकी तो एक अपर लिमिट है ना. From the Buddha's perspective, like when a Swamiji would come somewhere in the city, "Hey, beta, God will keep you healthy and safe." I said, then Swamiji, why is God's love so time bound that after 85, 90 years he decides that he no longer wants to keep me healthy and safe? Why is the timeline to his love? Then surely then a tortoise is more loved than God because he lives 160, 170. There are sea creatures who live 400 years. What is the rationality of God will take care of you? Because the Buddha's first point is God will not take care of you. That no matter who you are, that old man is you. That dead body is you. So if God is protecting my health and my life, then why is it expiry date का मतलब रिश्ता क्या है हमारा? इससे आगे कुछ होना चाहिए. वो जवाब आपको घंटे बजाने से नहीं मिलता. So Vivekananda had the capacity to say, I am questioning the religion, I am questioning the priests, I am questioning the orthodoxy. That is not religion. So he began to give me answers into spirituality, and that is where that came from. It is not the spirituality of the temple. And so far the temple goes, for whatever, since you're on that note, given that temples have been the big icon of spirituality for a few decades now, I don't know how many of you have read about his Kheer Bhavani experience. I remember it because I had gone to Amarnath and I had gone to Kheer Bhavani, and then I read Vivekananda's writing saying he went to Amarnath, and from there he went to Kheer Bhavani in Kashmir. And he went there, and there is this whole point in the book, Talks with Vivekananda. He's talking to a disciple, and he's worshipping the Devi for a week, and then he says this temple is in a very bad shape, destroyed by some older kings who came to Kashmir and all of that. He says this is, people should have fought for it. Had I been there, I would never have temple been in this situation. Now that's not an unfamiliar thought. You hear a lot about temples and situations. But he says to his disciples that when I thought of that, the mother goddess Hafil spoke to me. She said, it is my wish that I live in this temple in this state. Can I not erect a 7-story temple of gold here right now if I want? And something I think he said, you fool. Shall I protect you or will you protect me? So from that point, reading this, my mind would never align to saying I will defend God. मेरी इतनी औकात नहीं है. And the second line I took from here was the tangent of Ramakrishna talking, because I went to Ramakrishna after Vivekananda. And Ramakrishna would say to people that there are two ways to be a disciple. One is to be the child of the monkey, and the other is to be the child of the cat. But if you are the monkey's child, then you hold on to the mother as she jumps from here to there. That's your problem. If you let go, you slip, you fall. The kitten has no such problem. The cat lifts it and carries it, and then she jumps around. So the responsibility is the mother's, not the child's. So between this and between that, I think at least the vanity of being religious went out of me.
Great. I think this is time to open it up to the audience. We just have time for a few questions. It's the gentleman that just asked the
I
question.
actually had a couple of questions. So,
Make it brief.
how would Vivekananda describe the differences between spirituality, religion, theology, faith? How do you channel the differences?
So in the written question, I would say the answer is not applicable. Because the point I am saying is that is his domain. My domain is to draw what impacts my life. If what he is writing about is not impacting my life, I am not trying to be a scholar. I am a practitioner of him in the way it makes everyday living easier. The theology of it, there are people far better equipped to handle it. I just want to handle my own mind, not the world.
Swami, can you care?
The way I would put it is this way. Religion is when you use God for your life. Like my life is better with the washing machine, with the Wi-Fi, and similarly, my life is better with God. So God will provide me with the things I need, success and power and curing diseases. And that's one part of religion, which is mass religion. In every religion it's there. In the Vedas, that was what was called the Karma Kanda, the Pravritti Dharma. And spirituality is what I would say is your life for God. So your whole life is a quest for God realization, spiritual realization. So this is the contrast I would capture. For example, Buddha is spiritual in the sense that his whole quest was to overcome suffering. Now these two are not fully separate. When I've made up my mind that the solution to my problems is more money, more better health, better society, and I pray to God for that, that's the lower kind, that's the mass religion. But when I truly begin to understand the real answer to my questions, the real solution to my problems is the God realization, peace of mind, insight into the nature of the self and the world, then it becomes spirituality.
Would you say it's possible for someone to be spiritual without being religious?
Would you say, is it possible for someone to be spiritual without being religious? A lot of American youth say yes. There's a whole category, spiritual but not religious. That I think is a response to a problem with mass religion. That's why a lot of young people don't like to be identified with a particular organized religion.
No, because they make religion something which is oppressive, which tells you a list of things, it's just a list of commandments. Anything which makes you stop free thinking, and that's meant to be religion. That will always have a blowback because you're not supposed to apply your mind. It's just God's will. Have you seen the only question to that, the only man to ask the question actually in religion's terms is Vivekananda Ramakrishna. That if you're talking, have you seen God? And the only man who said, yes, I have. The rest is all conjecture. I could know as much as anybody else knows. None of us have seen God. It's our own interpretation.
Gentlemen there.
Namaskar, thank you for the privilege of being here. In your handbook, sir, you mentioned that it's a handbook for management of life. And in life, there's what we do and how we do it. And many times it's the why that defines things. Do you think that Swami Vivekananda impacts the why of what we do so that it impacts the how of what we do?
The why would be extremely personal to every individual, I would assume. So, I don't know if you can give a corrective answer for it because why, if I'm getting what you're saying, if I've caught you correctly, motivation in terms of right or wrong, moral or immoral or whatever, it is extremely subjective, right? So what at some point doing something might make sense to you, to somebody else not doing it might be accurate. I don't know if any external factor, any individual has a right or the responsibility to carry that for us. Or if you want to ask the question further, I will engage in that.
No. We do what we do based upon society or conditioning, etc., etc. The how, you mentioned that you started off with page 10 of the newspaper and you chose to make a choice as to why you would do what you did. Were you influenced in that impact of the way you went about working on page 10 because you saw a particular reason of why you should do it that way, and is there a common theme with that?
No, not really. Like, it's nothing about say whether you're doing a X work or Y because that's not in your control. What you do, we think it's in our control, it's not. If today, like something I'm slightly anti-Paulo, let's face it, if today I and Swamiji both said we really want to go to Mars, there's no way we can enter a NASA mission at this age. The things you can't do. So life sets you situations and everybody at 16 thinks they will do everything. By the time you're 25, it tells you there are 4 things you can't do. Sometimes physically you can't do things. The child thinks I will be Olympian and the child has a car run over his leg and he can no longer be an Olympian. So you finally end up living life the way it is presented to you. Those choices are not always yours. Whether you would want to be in New York today or you want to be in Delhi or in London, it's not always the choice you have made. You think you have made the choice, but there are often circumstances dictate things for you. So I think that's a neutral factor. You don't control that. All you control is, like he said earlier, that the duty which is nearest to you, the situation that you are. From there, your choice comes in. Most of our life is not actually about choice. It's things that you find yourself in.
I think we've run out of time, so we'll wrap it up here with thanks to Anshul. And do pick up your book, Vivekananda Handbook for Daily Living. Thanks to the organizers. Thank you very much.